1, 2, 3. Thank you, and you may all be seated. Esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen, before we move to the second session, we would like to inform you that we already provide refreshment on your left and right side. Please enjoy the refreshment while we're getting ready to session 2. On session 2, product innovation to promote growth and stability in Islamic finance, we'll aim to have thorough discussion about the current and future innovation in financial products and liquidity management in Islamic finance. As Islamic finance continues to grow, it is important to all stakeholders, including financial institutions, regulators, and investors, to find a balance between following Sharia principles and achieving market efficiency and stability. We will explore the latest development in financial products that meets client while ensuring compliance with Islamic guidelines. And we also open the dialogue in this session to provide valuable insights that can help you to navigate the complexities of Islamic finance and support its sustainable growth moving forward. This session will be moderated by Mr. Zaki Bantan. Mr. Zaki Bantan is the head of funding and manager of the Capital Markets Division at the Islamic Development Bank, or ISDB, in Jeddah, with over 15 years of experience at the institution. And now, please join me in welcoming the moderator for this session, Mr. Zaki Bantan. Mr. Zaki, the floor is yours. You may start now.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I know it's time for refreshment, that's why the focus is now on drinking and eating for a bit. But I know that we are somewhat behind schedule, so I will need to ask my esteemed panel speakers to join me on stage, and I will try to introduce one by one, hopefully, when we start. Maybe I need to start calling one by one. Please appreciate it. Pak Parjono, silahkan. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to thank Bank Indonesia, the IILM and IFSB for their kind invitation. It's great to be back in Jakarta, and it's an absolute pleasure to be here with you all, and I hope all of you are gaining new insight on the latest developments in Islamic finance. And I want to thank Dr. Dadang and his esteemed panelists for sharing their experience and perfectly setting the stage for this panel, where we're going to deliver deeper into product development to promote growth and stability in Islamic finance. Ladies and gentlemen, an average of 170 billion worth of sukuk have been issued in the past 5 years, showing strong demand for Sharia-compliant liquidity management tools, particularly from Malaysia, Indonesia, and Saudi Arabia. However, the challenge remains in ensuring adequate liquidity management for Islamic banks, which often face higher LCR requirements compared to their conventional counterparts due to the limited availability of short-term Sharia-compliant instruments. At the same time, Islamic fintech is rapidly growing, with some projections showing it will reach 128 billion by next year, offering opportunities to enhance product innovation and inclusivity. Now, let me start with Pak Parjono, who is the Assistant Minister for Macroeconomic and International Finance at the Ministry of Finance of Indonesia. And there's a good reason to start with him because he is also the Executive Director representing Indonesia at Islamic Development Bank. Pak Parjono, now, if you can basically share the Ministry of Finance views on the trends in the industry, efforts toward innovation like the groundbreaking cash flow sukuk, and the role of sukuk in Indonesia's fiscal policy.
Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Very good morning, selamat pagi. Terima kasih Pak Zaki. Pak Zaki, I found today is different with other days that I found him. Today is very, with the new style of course. We are working together in the Islamic Development Banks in Jeddah, but today I saw a different style. Okay, Pak Zaki give me about 9 minutes ya Pak ya. But I have yesterday the update on the macro contract, global contract, which full of challenges. I will not go through that said again, but directly this morning before this session also already explore. Ibu Kiki, Ibu Destri already touched much on the way how actually Suko has a significant role in the not only the national but also the global financial system, which is now facing the very much challenges. Let me start with the Indonesia Islamic finance asset that continue to grow. Already mentioned this morning before this session also positively amid the global uncertainty, and Islamic banking asset grew 8.3% last year. The capitalization Syariah compliant stock also increased by more than 28%, reaching above the 6,000 levels. Also, very strong outstanding growth on the performance of the SUKO, both sovereign and corporate SUKO, that 7.5% and 6.5% respectively. On the government of Indonesia side, that began issuing SUKO Negara in 2008 to diversify financing sources and develop Islamic financial market. Now it become a significant source of state financing and a major Islamic investment instrument domestically. And as of this October 2024, Suku Negara outstanding reached about 1.5 quadrillion atau 1,500 trillion in local currency rupiah, representing about 20% of total government securities. And I have the list on the monitor here, the milestone journey of Indonesia Suko that start on that 2008 until the last on 2020 when we start to develop on the cash wakaf linked Suko. And then on the next side, in terms of the legal infrastructure, we have strong legal basis and regulatory framework. The law number 19 of 2008, the sovereign Sharia securities and various other supporting regulations. We get also support on Sharia compliance from the National Sharia Board, Indonesian Ulama Council (MUI), and moreover, Suku Negara also updated and complied with the latest auditing from the International Financial Institution Standard. The next, after January 2020, primary dealership system for Suku Negara and benchmark series has been also implemented and brought some good impact, which maintain demand in the auction, and the second on the price discovery, the third increase price competition, hence lowering the cost of borrowing and increase the transaction activity of Suku Negara in the secondary market. Over the last 4 years, the activity of Suku Negara in the secondary market is in the upward trend, indicated by increasing number of average daily trading frequencies since that year 2019. And then on the innovation, I have to mention here that Indonesia has been leader in the innovation initiative for Suku Negara, focusing on products and technical advancement. Primary aim is to mobilize funds for accelerating sustainable development goal (SDGs) achievement through product innovation such as green Suko and cash wakaf linked Suko or CWLS. These products certainly help allocate financial resources towards sustainability projects. In terms of technical innovation, I have to mention that Indonesia has developed systems like the ESBN system and eMonef to enhance operational efficiency and service quality in the Suko management. Then I have to also touch on the green Suko that has been consistently active in sustainable financing, particularly through the issuance of this green Suko. The country efforts are evident in the rising trend of consolidated sustainable bonds. The government issued bonds have shown also steady increase, reaching about 6.2 billion by September last year, while corporate bond rose to 4.2 billion in the US dollar. This trend reflects Indonesia's ongoing commitment to financing this aligned with the global sustainable goals. Notably, Indonesia led the fiscal year 2023 issuance of sustainable Suko with 2.6 billion US dollar, capturing 19.3% market share. And also the government cumulative issuance stand at 9.6 billion US dollar in the first quarter this year, underscoring a prominent position in the market. Indonesia is also active raising awareness across various segments by issuing global green and Suko and SDG Suko bonds amounting to 7.15 billion dollar. Domestically, the issuance of the green retail Suko reached 5.08 trillion in local currency this year, while domestic wholesale Suko or bonds were issued at 41.93 trillion rupiah, illustrating the robust growth of sustainable finance in the Indonesia market. Specific to the cash wakaf linked Suko CWLS, as an innovative effort to connect commercial finance represented by Suku Negara and social finance through this cash wakaf. This asset often remain unproductive, so harnessing cash wakaf to fund social program and revitalize this asset is certainly crucial. By 2024, total issuance reached 1.16 trillion in local currency, approximately 74 million US dollar, with significant contribution from both private placement and book building. Retail CWLS investment returns are predominantly allocated to health, is about 36.8%, and then education 30.1%, economic development for 29%, and social initiative 2.2%. With involvement from individuals across 26 provinces and key Islamic financial institutions. CWLS emphasizes financial inclusiveness and sustainability. I will not see the prospect and challenges and further development. Based on the recent favorable trends, the sukuk market is likely to expand more in the future, and the increasing acceptance of environmental, social, and governance by investor, business sector, and government has created a potential opportunity by sukuk issuers to incorporate this trend. And the government prepared CWLS roadmap development, this morning mentioned by Budestri, among other by encouraging marketing channel diversification through Nasir's roles optimization in these marketing activities and alternative distribution channel development in the Islamic social finance aspect. Indonesia also making effort in the context of sukuk negara issuance, infrastructure development and marketing deepening. For instance, enhancement of the obligation of SBSN primary dealers in the primary and secondary market. And currently also Indonesia prepare for the potential of the financial market with the 6.29% of total investor that dominated by the millennial generation. In conclusion, I would like to mention here that in the perspective of fiscal policy, sukuk negara has proven to be a valuable tool for Indonesia economic development by diversifying financing options, driving growth in the Islamic finance market, and fostering innovation. Sukuk negara is poised to continue making a significant impact. And then collaboration and strategic roadmap. Sukuk negara is well positioned to drive sustainable development and moving forward by further integrating Islamic social finance and commercial finance and exploring innovative financing mechanisms with reliable partners, we can unlock even greater potential for positive impact. But one thing that I have to mention here, especially when experienced with the international development bank, MDBs like Islamic development banks, these instruments still have limited in terms of leveraging. What I mean is that when I was 4 years in the World Bank able to leverage equity until 400%. Other MDBs maybe 300% more, but in Islamic Development Bank, I see only up to 167% until this year. The reason is because the limitation room of maneuver of this instrument of sukuk when they are leveraging the equity. So this is homework for all of us here, how to make this Islamic or Sharia financing cheaper so that be able to even lift up our demand that actually from the very bottom society of the economy. I close here and back to Pak Zaki. Thank you, Pak Zaki.
Thank you, Papa Jono, for your very insightful feedback. And, you know, we admire Republic of Indonesia's leadership when it comes to green sukuk. For instance, for the Islamic Development Bank, last green sukuk was done 5 years ago. But rest assured, inshallah, next year we'll be coming back with our second green sukuk, inshallah. And of course, I believe this is a call for all market players to step up, basically, for their innovation game, strengthen collaboration across the board in order to achieve what His Excellency Pak Perry mentioned earlier, to do more progress in Islamic finance. Now, let's move and get some flavor from the Malaysian market. And I turn to Mr. Ahmad Muhammad Sharif, the CEO of CIMB Islamic, to share their experience of tackling liquidity management challenges and how these are being addressed through innovation.
Terima kasih Pak Zaki. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat siang. Yeah. But I think jadi as a context, maybe I will say that the development of the Islamic banking space and the liquidity side actually mirrors the development of the industry itself. As it grows and so on, there's a lot of new things that you learn. And I will echo what DG Adnan said earlier. It's actually really is a berjemaah. You have to do it by ecosystem. You need not just the banks, but you need the investors to be mobilized. You also need the corporates to be mobilized. You need the legal accounting services to also be mobilized so that you can actually grow the whole sector. It's not a approach whereby only one party will do it or will drive it, but it requires the efforts of everyone in the market. Now, and I think for us, we are very keen because I think CIMB, representing CIMB, we are also quite active in the Sharia market in Indonesia. I think Pak Panji and team here, they are here, they run the CIMB Niaga Sharia. It's a very important business for us. It's growing very fast, and liquidity concern is top of mind. I think when we talk about growth and growing the business here, always liquidity comes back into mind. So there's something that we are actively also working, and where we can find some technology transfer, knowledge transfer, and so on, we'll try to do it. So as part of us helping the growth in Indonesia as well. Now, I think when I talk about innovation in the context of Malaysian market, I will bucket it by different efforts. The first effort is actually how do we mobilize liquidity from the banks themselves? Yeah, because you have, so in Malaysia we have 26 Islamic banking institutions, 13 are domestic banks, we have 10 foreign locally incorporated, and then you have DFI. All of them have different liquidity profile. Some have surplus liquidity, some have short of liquidity. Jadi the first starting point is how do we let the banks themselves settle the liquidity among themselves, right? Because before going out to the market, before going to the government and so on, within the system itself, if you have surplus liquidity and so on, how do you allow the transfer of liquidity from one another? So I think the first bucket of, I wouldn't say innovation, but product development work that we did as an industry together with the regulator was how do we create mechanism for liquidity to be channeled between the banks themselves. Jadi what is the problem? Apa permasalahannya? Well, number one is credit. Yeah, the larger banks will be better credit, and the lower banks, smaller banks might have more inferior credit. How do we facilitate the transfer between the two when the credit standing is different? Jadi we come up with instruments like Islamic repo or collateralized commodity murabahah, whereby the credit risk is transferred from the counterparty to the collateral, to the underlying security itself. Yeah, that's one way of innovation. The other piece that we have done between the banks themselves is that, you know, all the banks will have their own Sharia committee, everyone will have an idea of how they want to do the contracts and so on. We actually standardize as an industry. Interbank contracts, interbank transactions are all standardized, and it's not legally enforced, but it's actually ada garis panduan. So as an association, we say there are garis panduan for different types of instruments for us to transact among the banks. So this actually allows us to manage the liquidity between the banks who are larger, who has surplus liquidity, and the banks who are smaller, which might be short of liquidity. The second bucket of development work that we did as an industry over the last 30 years is also how do we tap liquidity from external, daripada institusi. How do we get our institutions to actually bring in? Because if you just rely on retail, it takes too much time. to grow the retail market and so on. It's more stable, but it takes too much time. But we need large money to come in, and large amount of money, and this must also come in at critical moments when there's actually confidence crisis and so on. This money must be there to be stable, right? Jadi one chunk of money that comes in to support the Islamic liquidity in Malaysia is actually the government sector. So all the SOEs, all the kementerian and so on, they do place money in the Islamic money market. But the other piece is actually the big government-linked investment companies. So you have basically, you have Tabung Haji, or BPKH is the equivalent here. Our pension fund, EPF, is also, they have a dedicated Sharia fund. You also have things like the QAP, which is our pension, what calls our public sector pension fund. So this large amount of funds, they have dedicated Sharia funds, which then in turn support the overall liquidity of the market. Now, in terms of product development or innovation that we need to do is again similar to what we have done among the banks themselves. We cannot make them confused. If they want to put money into the Islamic banking sector, into the Sharia banking sector, they must have certainty and they must have standardization. Therefore, they don't have to negotiate. If I go with this bank, Bank A, I have to do different document. If I go to Bank B, different document. If I want to do different, so if I want to place, I have to do different instruments. So what we have done as an industry is to take away the variances and standardize. Jadi if you are a large corporate, you're a large institution, you want to put money into the Islamic banking system, kaedahnya sama, produk-produknya sama, dokumentasinya standardized, legal certainty we also provide. So as an association, we actually also employ legal counsel to give an industry standard legal opinion. Jadi ada certainty. That allows us to mobilize the funds from large institutions. The third one, and which is what we are currently actively working on, is how do we mobilize funds into the Islamic banking sector from cross-border, international. How do we bring dollars into Malaysia, convert it to ringgit, ataupun disimpan dalam ringgit, dalam dollars, right? Because remember, global financial system, based on McKinsey estimate, is about 402 trillion. Islamic is only 6 trillion globally. Malaysia is about 0.8 trillion Islamic. Yeah. Jadi, solution to our liquidity problem is not just to carve the pie internally, but to actually bring more money into the Islamic sector. Yeah. Jadi that's what. So the other thing that we're trying to do, and to facilitate money coming into Malaysia in foreign currency, into Sharia, into Islamic. Then again, legal certainty, products with high legal certainty, standardization, that's very, very important. We also work with parties like IILM, which also bring interest into Malaysia. But more importantly, you need the ability to manage the currency risk. Jadi, development on derivative product becomes important. Because at the very basic, you must allow the management of currency risk. Yeah? And you facilitate FX swap. Jadi itu as an industry, the innovation or development that we have done as an industry, and again, I always talk about this as industry because none of this work is done by an individual bank. It's always done by collectively. We have standardized our what call this our derivative agreement. We use the IIFM template to develop the Tawahud Master Agreement, so that any foreign institution coming into Malaysia wanting to do derivative, they will use a standard master agreement that is developed internationally by IIFM, tetapi digunakan locally oleh the Islamic banking institution, yeah, which is our Tawahud agreement. Jadi itu dia memudahkan, yeah. And then we also again, they usually ask legal opinion, so we also employ foreign legal firms to say these are the legal certainty when you enter into the contracts and whatnot. Jadi itu another angle of development whereby how do we mobilize international liquidity. I think the other buckets of innovation is, how do you free up the balance sheet? These are either repos ataupun kita ada we provide liquidity on our mortgage book and whatnot. So those are among the buckets of this. So I think maybe Pak Zaki, I'll end this first. So if you ask me about what we have done over the last 30 years in stages, is really these big buckets: mobilizing the interbank money, mobilizing the institution money, and then mobilizing the international money.
Thank you. In fact, I remember working on my first Sukuk transaction, and at that time, CIMB was one of the joint lead manager there, and we hope to see CIMB continue its leadership to expand opportunities for all stakeholders in the industry. Again, collaboration between all stakeholders. Now, moving on to the largest Islamic bank in Indonesia, we are pleased to have Pak Kamal Aditya, who is the Group Head Treasury, who has the easy task to describe how their liquidity levels and risk management strategies are driven by the demand for their Sharia-compliant investment products, and how Bank Sharia Indonesia views the role of Sukuk as not only a liquidity management tool, but also a diversification instrument.
Thank you, Bang Zaki. Selamat pagi menjelang siang, Bapak Ibu sekalian yang saya hormatin. First of all, I would like to thank Bank Indonesia team, Pak Dadang and team, for having us here to invite Bank Syariah Indonesia to this distinguished panel. Used to have to very close correlation and coordination with Pak Arif as well. Thank you, Pak, for your support throughout the years. And happy to share some of our tip and strategy, dealing with the liquidity issue in Bank Syariah in Indonesia, especially. Well, I've seen that the basic challenge for the liquidity management for Bank Syariah Indonesia is, of course, because we as a bank has an inherent risk, in terms of mismatch duration between asset and liabilities. So no different than other bank, we also facing the similar situation in Bank Syariah. For us in Bank Syariah Indonesia, we focus first in building a strong franchise for CASA balance, current account and saving accounts, because it's very important to have a very stable core funding and diversified core funding coming from our individual customer as well as from corporate customer. But it's easier to say than to be done, right? Building a strong CASA balance is not an easy task to do. First, we need to have transactional capability within the bank in order for our client to transact with us. And for that, we need to invest in technology, of course. We need digitalization. We need the capability in our mobile banking, for example. I think one of the main challenges because of the technology advancement is very rapid these days, and we as a bank compete not with other bank of course, but we also compete with other financial institutions. And the technology that coming from offshore and is very rapidly coming to our customer as well. In order to have this digitalization initiative, which I view goes hand in hand with the liquidity management, for example, for Bank Syariah Indonesia, our value proposition, one of our value proposition in developing digital technology is, of course, to integrate the Z-Swap feature in our mobile banking. That is one of the strategy, so that our customer can channel their social willingness into our mobile banking. That's one of the strategy that we use. And of course, we also develop other inclusive product. For example, if the government has issued a cash wakaf link sukuk, we also issue a deposit wakaf. That's one of the example. The second thing, to further diversify our funding, in order to get more stable core funding, we also launched several initiatives. For example, last year we issued the Sharia compliant mortgage-backed securitization, just to show to the market that we as a Sharia bank are able to do similar, not really similar product, but it's a securitization product which allow us to recycle our mortgage portfolio, generate liquidity, and then also earning fee-based income while doing it. And also other innovation that I think is crucial, we are the first mover this year. We issue the local currency sustainability sukuk for the first time this year, thanks to our support from the OJK to enable us to launch this product as well. And Alhamdulillah, this product received a positive demand from the market. Of course, to create demand, we have to create the supply. That's why we try to issue this sukuk sustainability. it's really a lot of effort to issue an ESG sukuk really. We learned that a lot. But of course, there's also benefit in issuing this sustainability sukuk for a corporation and for a bank as well. We have a long-term value, yeah, in the eyes of our customer, and there are, if you notice, there are some greenium, yeah, in issuing this sustainability sukuk, yeah, thanks to Bank Indonesia policy on macroprudential, on RPIM especially, so that we can enjoy some greenium when we are issuing sustainability sukuk. I think that's sort of summarize our strategy to handle overall liquidity problem within the Bank Syariah Indonesia. Thanks.
Thank you, Kamal. I wish there is actually greenium in global green sukuk. Unfortunately, that's not happening in our what we've seen so far. But thank you. And one of the challenging also issuing a thematic issuance is that the requirement for reporting. So I hope, we've seen from ICB side, it's not that easy, but I hope that this can be tackled on early on so that there is no delays in reporting. Now, I believe we have one panel participant joining us virtually. Do we have Ustaz Bashar Natur? Yes, we have him with us. Assalamu alaikum. Sabah al khair, Bashar. And to introduce Bashar, he is the Managing Director of Islamic Finance at Fitch Rating. But before that, he used to be an ex-colleague at ISDB. Unfortunately, when I joined the bank, he already left the bank. Sabah al khair, Bashar, once again. Let me ask you, Bashar, in terms of if you can bring us what is the rating agency's perspective when it comes to monitoring stakeholders such as regulator, issuers in Islamic finance, and if you can shed some light on how credit risk is assessed for Islamic financial products, and observation on the trends on the liquidity management, and then the overall role that rating agency play towards the growth of Islamic finance industry.
Sabah al khair. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's also a bit of sad to me not to be there with you on the ground. I see very familiar faces there, so hopefully, inshallah, next time I'll be there in person. I think you have four dimensions, and let me try maybe to sequence them and put them in perspective. And I'll start actually with the liquidity and then move to the rating agencies and then sukuk and how we do that from a credit perspective. I have to say I'm privileged to be sitting where I am because we have a lot of the transactions coming from various jurisdictions and various stakeholders, whether sovereigns, financial institutions, MDBs, or what have you, coming for us for rating, and we rate around 190 billion outstanding US dollar as of Q3, which is more than 211 instruments. Now, when I am looking at that, I've heard a lot of things about innovation, I've heard a lot of things about standardization, but I have to say that Islamic finance has innovation in its DNA. Maybe in certain times, it's more than needed because it's very disruptive. We can discuss that definitely in there, but it is at the heart of it. So the existence of Islamic finance and sukuk starts and continue to grow based on innovation, because it is trying to match a lot of stakeholders when it comes to credit risk, investor appetite, issuer appetite, and then Sharia. And on top of that, you have the regulatory bodies. Now, when I am looking at this, it's a very fragmented picture. I can sympathize when I'm looking at Malaysia when they say we have this standardized, we have that standardized. That is not the case in most markets, I have to say. That is not the case in even a single market product where interbank can be easily and swiftly executed you're talking about other markets that they don't have availability of that product, availability of debt capital market that allows them to issue or raise funds. If I link that to liquidity, and I think this is at the heart of it, liquidity in its purest form is a blessing, because at the end of the day, the whole industry, most of the banks in many of the OIC countries are deposit funded. That by itself means that you have money that you need to invest. Now, not having that money is a bigger issue, of course. But having that money, it entails a cost, and means that you need to put that money somewhere to invest that. Now, that is a problem. It's a good problem to have, but it's definitely something that you need to manage, which I am sure we have IILM there that they will talk about this and how the sukuk market. But this liquidity, part of it, is a key driver for the sukuk market, because you have what I like to call an anchor investor coming from Islamic banks, where they have more demand than the actual supply. So having the dynamic of more demand than supply is again another blessing. It's another positive for the growth of the market. Yes, we all talk about lack of availability of sukuk in the market and what have you, but it is the driving force behind that. So as you can see, I'm looking through the chain. Where did it start? Where is it going? And where is it heading? Now, having that liquidity again, here comes a very important aspect. You have sukuk, but at the end of the day, do you have the right quality of sukuk? And here, the role of credit agency, or one of the key roles of the credit rating agency and us, is critical, because at the end of the day, our ratings will enable you to compare a sukuk issued from Indonesia and another one issued from Turkey, another one issued from Qatar or Hong Kong or Philippines or what have you. So the availability to be able to compare from a risk perspective is very important. Having the liquidity and having that liquidity investing it and having investing it in the right risk quality is the chain that you need to look through. Now, that is an ideal scenario. So this is a simple chain, but I don't see that in all countries. In countries where you have an advanced ecosystems like the GCC, for example, because you have a dominant Islamic finance sector. So I really relate and understand that Indonesia, the banks are trying to still go for mobile banking. They're competing for that. In the GCC, if you look at Kuwait, and I'm sure speakers from Kuwait, you're talking about 50% of the banking sector being Islamic finance. They are really competing on a market share, on the development of their automation, being able to capture a significant part of the deposits, which allows them to function, which is the oil that goes into the engine, if I may say that. In Saudi Arabia, more than 85% of financing, bank financing, is Islamic finance. If I look at UAE and Qatar, we're talking between 29 to 30% of the deposits or banking sector or financing being in Islamic format. Bahrain, on a local level, we're talking about around 40. Malaysia, of course, 40, and going the plan to go to up to 50. If I look at Turkey, if I look at Indonesia, we're still talking about 9-10% of the banking sector. So the countries that I've mentioned is around 8. We have 57 OIC countries. And if I go beyond that, where we have Muslim minorities or what have you, the story is different. So it's a fragmented story that I'm looking at. The key aspect of that story is having standardization, but that whole industry is based on confidence, based on how people perceive that this industry is fulfilling part of their mandates. Not everyone is Sharia sensitive, but you have a significant party that is Sharia sensitive. You have another party that is dealing with the industry, and they are conventional, which is the investors that are coming from the West. So the expansion and the existence of the industry, to summarize and maybe move to the last point, is based on innovation, but that innovation needs to fulfill all stakeholders, whether on the issuer side, investor side, regulatory side, whether on the Sharia sensitive side and the Sharia not sensitive side, to allow this industry to function. Of course, we can talk about new standards, old standards, how is that impacting the industry in details, but the core thing is when we're talking about the liquidity, it is the oil that moves the engine in the banking side, it moves the engine in the sukuk side, because having that liquidity means you need to invest it somewhere, and that investment somewhere is part of it is a sukuk story. And the comparability and the ability to compare how you translate your credit risk is something that we are, I would say, passionate about. We're very specialized in doing that. In Sukuk specifically, we have a Sukuk rating criteria. That Sukuk rating criteria looks through the structures to arrive to ratings, whether they are senior unsecured, senior secured, or subordinated. But in its majority, that criteria is more for what we call asset-based, i.e. the credit risk lies with the obligor, i.e. the government or the bank or the corporate or the project that is actually issuing, rather than the underlying assets, although we have the underlying assets there to satisfy the Sharia side of things. But we do, of course, have also ratings, but it's a very minority, and we have, again, IILM, they're sitting there, which is actually asset-backed. Yes, IILM is asset-backed, but the asset-backed is based on the sukuk itself. So at the end of the day, you are talking about an industry that is more aligned with the, I would say, the debt side of pari passu status of a senior secured, which is the vast majority of the 190 billion that we rate outstanding, which is a significant part of the US dollar market global. There are discussions, there are new standards that are there. I'm not going to go into that. So the draft standard for IOF 62, how is that going to pan the industry? There is a push there to change the industry from an asset-based to an asset-backed one. How is that going to pan out? Who's going to implement? How is it going to look like? All of these continue to be an open questions. What I can say to that, when we're talking about asset-backed products, it's not something that is uncommon in the developed market. We actually have a lot of criteria that's been there for decades. But what we don't have the regulatory frameworks in most of the countries to deal with securitization and asset-backed. We don't have the know-how from the issuer and the investors to be able to deal with these instruments and have it on their desk. And most importantly, we don't have the appetite. So that is something that needs to be looked at, and how is that developing. That will have an impact on the liquidity of the market, but on the liquidity of the sukuk market. Because for international investors, when they buy sukuk, they will think, okay, they don't buy and hold like Islamic banks, they buy and they want to sell. And if they have issues there, then the confidence will be shaken from that side. Who's going to adopt this? Who's going to implement this is something to look for. But I will conclude, as I started, as liquidity, if you have it, is a good problem to have, but it comes with a cost, and that needs to be invested in something that has a credit quality that is acceptable.
Thank you, Bashar. Very interesting notes there. And I read your article on Standard 62. Just a quick question, follow-up there. Any changes from your initial article? If you had to write it today, would there be any changes on that front? And the impact on liquidity as well.
Okay. So my views is the IOF standard 62 is still a draft. We don't know how the final form will look like. So it's 3 stages. The first stage is how is the final draft is going to look like. The second stage is who is going to implement it, because 20 jurisdictions say they implement IOF Sharia standards, but the implementation varies significantly. The last one is how is it going to be implemented, because we saw IOF 59, as all of us know. The one that spearheaded the process was the UAE. Other countries, they were trying to adopt and adapt to that. So for me, it is how is the final standard going to look like, and then who is going to adopt it, and most importantly, how. So is it really going to transform the industry from an asset-based to an asset-backed and become securitization? Do you have the regulation, legislation, because if you're talking about sovereigns, that is something that we need to see to allow it to happen. Do you have the investor appetite to allow it to happen? And most importantly, it's not only a sukuk credit issue. It is also an issuer itself credit issue, i.e. if you tell me that a bank is going to sell 25% of its best assets, I will need to go actually and assess the implication of that on the bank's rating itself, let alone am I going to be able to rate that sukuk or not. The simplest thing that I have in mind when I am talking about this to conclude, of course, it's a wait and see. Let's see who's gonna, I mean, these three stages out there gonna pan out. But at the end of the day, if you are targeting equity, equity should not be complex. We are a credit rating agency. So credit rating agency means debt. If the intention is to have equity, equity should not be complex. You don't need 100 pages to explain equity. That's very clear. I think the innovation comes when you're trying to have and satisfy a debt-like instrument that complies with Sharia. And there you have to have innovation that is acceptable for the stakeholders when it comes to that. Liquidity in the market. Now, if you are hurting the appetite of investors and the appetite of issuers, depending on who's and how it's going to be implemented, that is definitely going to hit the core of liquidity, because that's the way that you raise funds, that's the way that you invest funds. At the end of the day, it is on both sides, need to be assessed, but I would say, let's see how the standard is going to look like once it's out. We don't have a time frame. Who is going to adopt it and how? And then we can assess the real impact on the industry itself. But I think we might see a more fragmented rather than a more standardized and harmonized industry if this goes on as is.
Khair, inshallah. And again, I just realized that I'm actually the only one who was not wearing batik. Even Bashar, who's joining remotely, is wearing batik. I'm being told to make it into quick. So let's go back to where we are in Indonesia, and I want to ask Bapak Romi Bukhari about the key drivers for product innovation in line with Sharia principle, as he is the head of the Sharia business at Maybank Indonesia. And if you can tell us also liquidity management strategy that Maybank Indonesia that implements in the operations.
Okay, thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Very good morning to everyone. First of all, thank you for Bank Indonesia for hosting this great session. Thank you, Brother Zaki. So we'll cover a little bit about liquidity management, specifically for the Islamic Bank in Indonesia. First, we'll look at some of the landscape of the industry. Then we'll look at some of the products and instruments that's available. Then I'll discuss a little bit about some of the challenges that we face here in Indonesia. Next slide, please. Okay, next. Okay, so here in Indonesia, we have over 14 now, 14 full-blown Islamic bank with 20-odd Islamic windows. So what we're looking at here is the monetary operations instruments that are being used in the market, where Islamic monetary operations instruments that is floating around the market is about 7.4% from the overall system size, which is actually in line with the asset portion of the Indonesian Islamic Bank, where we are sitting now at about 7.2%. I gave a little bit of a comparables there, where in Malaysia, the size at about almost 40%. Okay. If we move on to the next one. So this is a little bit of comparables of what's available in the conventional as well as in the Islamic market in Indonesia. In general, what we have in Islamic side is pretty much at par with what we have in the conventional side. We have instruments that covers the short term from overnight all the way to the up to 1 year. We have instruments that goes beyond that. We also have instruments in terms of repo, some of the Sharia hedgings. Yeah, of course, BI, our central bank, provides various liquidity instruments. What we don't have at the moment that is glaring compared to the rest of the market is, for one, is we don't have a profit rate swap yet. The discussion in that is still pretty nascent, yeah, but it's ongoing. And obviously options is something that we're still lacking. In terms of sukuk, it's there, But beyond sovereign issued sukuk, the supply is very limited. We talked about also maybe IILM liquidity instruments that is fairly used in Malaysia and the Middle East. That is still yet to take, speed and acceleration in Indonesia. So that's possibly another instruments that we can use in the nearer future, when the needs arise. Some of the difference in some of the instruments that we have compared to what we have overseas is, let's say, for instance, when we're talking about repo, repo in an Islamic market overseas is usually done on a basically net full sale basis, right? Final sales basis. While what we have here is a little bit more simpler, a little bit more simple, where it's going to be on a unilateral undertaking base. So there are some differences between some of the products with the same effect that we have here in Indonesia. If we can go to the next one. Okay, this is some of the stuff that you see here. Also, another differences that we have in Indonesia, when you're looking at interbank instruments based on commodity murabaha. What we have in Indonesia is very recently just being made available in the last year or so, and it's still limited in the rupiah denominated. So we have yet to have commodity murabaha based on foreign currency, US dollars. Hedging, using commodity murabaha as a base. In the offshore markets, typically in the accounting wise, it's the actual FX transaction that's being booked. While the Indonesian GAAP requires both the FX transactions as well as the commodity murabaha transaction itself to be booked. So there's some of the differences that we have that may hamper some of the usance of our products by overseas customers or overseas counterparts. If we can go to the next one, I'm just going to touch on some of the challenges. I mean, the industry is growing very fast, alhamdulillah. But again, just like any growing industries, there are challenges, there are teething problems. For one is the size of the industry itself. The counterparts that Islamic banks have is very limited. And obviously the size predominantly are pretty small in terms of whether the Islamic banks or the Islamic windows. There are big ones, but they're a handful, while the rest are smaller ones. So that creates a bit of an imbalances in terms of liquidity management, or even when we go to, let's say, a syndication transaction. Well, the counterparts or the bank partners that we have are pretty limited, and many are quite small in size and capability. That hampers in the long-term instruments that banks usually take for our liquidity kind of activities. Second is, if we look at the counterparts offshore, like I said earlier, there are some minor differences that hampers this kind of cooperation with foreign counterparties. We're talking about, okay, it could be the same product with the same effect, but we're using different akad or different structures here in Indonesia. Or it could be the same akad, but with different accounting standards or accounting treatment. So it's sort of like I guess an electrical plug with 3 prongs and 2 prongs. We need a little bit of adapters. So that's what's some of the stuff that's hampering the connectivities between the Indonesian market liquidity with the rest of the overseas market. I mentioned earlier, in terms of liquidity instruments that we have locally is pretty at par with what we have here locally in the conventional side. But there are also some differences. Let's say, for instance, when we're talking about some of the monetary operation products, where the availability could be a little bit different. In the conventional side, we have 1 week, 1 month, and 3 months, and so on, kind of tenors availability. In the Islamic side, we don't have the 1 month instrument. So for Islamic bank, we either do the 2 weeks, the 1 week, or anything above 1 month, which is typically 3 months. So that's a big of a gap there in terms of whether bank is comfortable taking a 1 week risk of mismatch, or are we comfortable to take 3 months? That's quite a big jump. That also can result in limited appetite for the longer term instruments, as well as the frequency of the auction itself being held. This is a chicken and egg situation. Market is smaller and the auction is a little bit less frequent. For instance, for conventional instruments, the auctions being done is on a weekly basis. For Islamic instruments, for anything above 1 week, it's on a monthly basis. So that's a long time to take a position, to take a view on your liquidity position before the next auction. So these are some of the kind of challenges that we have. But again, the government, BI, OJK has been working really, really hard together with the industry to make sure bit by bit that the playing field is more level. The playing field is easier for the Islamic institutions to gather liquidity as well as to manage it going forward. If I can leave with the last slide, this is something that is maybe a bit different for Indonesia. We're talking about SRIA, or the Sharia Restricted Investment Account, which is essentially a risk participation on a funded basis that allows bank to invite even non-banks or non-bank FI to participate in a specific projects that the banks is financing. So this has the flexibility for investors to choose the underlying asset in accordance to their risk appetite, while at the same time, the bank able to retain the financing on its book. So this is quite interesting. OJK has just come up with a guidance on this. Maybank, we've done this for quite a while for Maybank, as well as in Indonesia here. So we hope this can be another vehicle that we can use going forward for our liquidity instrument. Thank you. Assalamualaikum.
Thank you, Pak Romi. I think let's get in touch after this because we also want to do more business with Maybank and all the banks here. But last but not least, I think I will ask from the industry level organization, the leader, IILM, Pak Safri, who is the CEO. I would like to request him to share the IILM perspective, its mandate, and how they see new liquidity management solution evolving.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Excellencies, Bapak-Bapak, Ibu-Ibu, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. It's an absolute honor for IILM to be the joint organizer of this forum, alongside Bank Indonesia, Pak Dadang and team, as well as IFSB, Sister Aminah, who's also present here today. It's an absolute pleasure for me to be here this morning, just coming to afternoon now. So the good thing about being the last panelist is that you are able to pick up on all the points that have been uttered, all the great strong points. But the bad thing of being the last panelist is all the points I've written here has been taken. by all the panelists. So the keywords that I've heard, right, from all the panelists, including Mr. Bashar, about Islamic finance, bapa-bapa, ibu-ibu, constrained, restricted. I'm not talking about the restricted investment account though. Restricted, limited, small, and the last word, which is coming from me today, handicap. So those 5 words perfectly describe Islamic finance today. There's also this famous phrase in Bahasa. I'm not so sure whether this phrase is a famous phrase in Bahasa Indonesia or Bahasa Malaysia. Hendak seribu daya. Enggak seribu dalih. Meaning if we really want to do something, we will do it. Similar to the case of Bapak Pajiano when he was so eloquently, passionately presenting about the Sukuk Negara, that the government of Indonesia, Republic of Indonesia is the most prolific sovereign Sukuk issuer in the whole wide world. Am I right, Pak Pajiano? So congrats to Republic of Indonesia for that. And also for our Malaysian colleagues, all the efforts that Malaysia has done in developing Islamic finance melalui onak-onak berliku and berduri in trying to spur the growth of Islamic finance. So when it comes to IILM, if I could address your question, Pak Zaki, one of the challenges that Islamic finance has been facing and will continue to face is managing its liquidity. So as banks get bigger, and based on the statistics that our brother had shown earlier, is only at 7% plus, less than 10%. So the only way for Islamic banks or Sharia banks in Indonesia is up. So I'm not talking about 20% or 25%, right? So if I were to ask everyone, every single passionate Islamic finance practitioners in this very room today, what is the ideal percentage for Sharia banking in Indonesia? What will be the answer? Can I have a show of hands? Perhaps from one of the passionate panelists just before lunchtime today? Perhaps our lady sister who's just smiling. What would be the ideal percentage for Sharia banking in Indonesia? The most populous Islamic country in the world. Would it be 40%? Would it be 40% is what Malaysia is at today, which is close to 50%. Indonesia should be higher than 50%. In fact, in the Islamic finance jurisdictions or in the Islamic countries, Islamic banks should be the default proposition. Every new bank that comes to fruition has to start off as an Islamic bank first. Conventional should be the alternative model, not the other way around today. Right? And because everybody is talking about the congruence between Islamic finance and SDGs. Islamic finance being the ethical finance. Right? And so Islamic banks or new banks, incumbent banks, should start off as Islamic banks first. Then only the conventional finance will come. And I don't understand why conventional finance should be used, except for those companies that may not be able to do Islamic banking. IILM, our role is to plug the gaps where liquidity management is concerned. And this gap is growing bigger and bigger. And I'm seeing this phenomenon today. The team is seeing this phenomenon today, where every time we issue our sukuk on a monthly basis, our auction on a monthly basis, our bid to cover ratio is like goreng pisang panas. What is the equivalent goreng pisang panas in Indonesia, Pak Kamal? Is it like only panas? Only so goreng pisang panas, pisang goreng panas, right? And it's the book is going to be so hot, right? For every $1 billion US dollar of monthly auction, the book will be 2 billion or 2.5 billion. Yes, it is a good problem for IILM to handle, but it is on a much larger scale, it's a big problem for Islamic finance. What does that mean, Sister Amina? That means that we are not able to meet the demand coming from our PDs and non-PDs, our primary dealers as well as non-primary dealers. So how do we meet the demand? So one of the things that we are doing now is to ramp up on our asset pool so that we can issue a much larger sukuk on a monthly basis so that more and more Islamic banks, right, from all over the world can benefit from our high quality liquid asset status, right? Which is why we are going to be doing that. We are continuously going to be ramping up on our assets. We are looking at expanding our investor base, right? So that more Islamic banks, including those banks in Indonesia, are going to be the beneficiaries of our papers. And going back, taking cue from the input that our brother has said in terms of the challenges that the Sharia banks are facing in Indonesia, so we are here to plug the gaps, but we are not going to be able to do it alone. We need all the support from on the asset side as well as on the liability side, on the issuance side. So inshallah we can make it happen with the support, with the determination from everyone here. So let me just take a pause, right? But before I do so, let me just remind everyone again on that bahasa phrase, right? Anda seribu daya, enggak anda seribu dalih. If I can repeat that again. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Pak Safri. Again, mashallah, IILM is a success story, and inshallah we hope to see it grow and see more issues coming, inshallah. Unfortunately, I was being told that there will be no Q&A session, unfortunately, as we already passed our time. But I want to conclude by saying that the industry is at a critical juncture, and we can say that partnership and innovation are the future, and we need to collaborate. So we call upon everyone in the public as well as the private sector to continue their diligent efforts to further grow, progress, and promote stability in the industry for the betterment of the Ummah, inshallah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you, gentlemen. Let's have group photo first before you come back to your seats. Okay, please gather at the center of the screen. Okay, let's have a photo. Okay, ready? Smile. 1, 2, 3. Another one. 1, 2, 3. Thank you, gentlemen. You may all be seated. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we are delighted to have all of you with us today for the awards presentations for the IILM's top performing primary dealers to recognize their outstanding achievements in the first half of 2024. And for the first category of primary market, first position goes to First Abu Dhabi Bank. Second position goes to Kuwait Finance House, and third position goes to Bobian Bank. And now for the second category, the secondary market. First position goes to Kuwait Finance House, Second position goes to First Abu Dhabi Bank. Third position goes to Al Barakat Turk. And we would also like to acknowledge Badan Pengelola Keuangan Haji BPKH among the IILM's new investor this year. And also special mention to the 3 of the IILM's primary dealers for increasing its minimum commitment of the IILM short-term programs in 2024. They are Kuwait Finance House, Maybank Islamic, and Bobian Bank. They play a crucial role in the IILM's continued success. And now I invite Mr. Muhammad Shafri Shahul Hamid, CEO of IILM Corporation, to present the awards. And please welcome all awardees to the stage. Mr. Khalid Al-Rukhayes, Executive Manager of the KFH, Mr. Adil Al-Mutairi, Treasurer at Bobian Bank, Mr. Roni Bukhari, Director of the Sharia Business Unit of Maybank Indonesia, and Mr. Fadlul Imansyah, Chief of Executive Board of BPKH, to receive the IILM's tokens of appreciation. Okay, and now all together, awardees, let's have a group photo. Ready? 1, 2, 3. And now another one. 1, 2, 3. Congratulations, gentlemen, and you may all be seated. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, let us begin the final session for the day. Panel Session 3 on growing importance of the Islamic liquidity management, unique role of the IILM as a sole liquidity management solution provider globally. This session aims to showcase evolution and strategic milestones of the IILM from its founding to its current role in the global markets. We will witness the development of liquidity management in Islamic finance and the development of its short-term Sukuk program. And to moderate the session is Mr. Hanif Ghulam Mohammed, Executive Director of Affin Bank Group. Mr. Hanif Ghulam Mohammed has been the Executive Director of Group Treasury at Affin since December 1st, 2021. He is a chartered professional in Islamic finance, holding a professional certificate in Islamic finance from ISEF and a bachelor's degree in economic and management from the University of London. With over 20 years of experience in banking, particularly in treasury, he has held various roles, including regional head of Islamic treasury and director of fixed income at major Malaysian banks. Please welcome our moderator, Mr. Hanif Ghulam Mohammed. You may start.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum everyone. Thank you Ibu for the lovely introduction. Firstly, thank you everyone for allowing us to continue our session 3, which is titled Growing Importance of the Islamic Liquidity Management, the unique role IILM plays as the sole liquidity management solution provider globally. Ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to introduce the distinguished panel of speakers that will join me on the stage today. Firstly, I would like to welcome Pak Rahmatullah, He is the Executive Director of Reserve Management of Bank Indonesia. He has a solid background in macroeconomic, monetary policy and financial market. Prior to his current position, he held prominent roles as the Head of Financial Market Development Group and Head of Monetary Operations Group in Bank Indonesia. Secondly, I would like to introduce Mr. Hisham Buknis, currently the Executive Director of the Business Operations Department at IILM. He oversees the execution of business strategies, regular issuances of short-term sukuk, origination and structuring of the Islamic assets. Third, I would like to introduce Mr. Khalid Al-Ruqayas, Executive Manager of the Capital Markets at Kuwait Finance House. He currently manages several sukuk portfolios and well experienced in the primary secondary sukuk market. Last but not least, please welcome Mr. Adil Al-Mutairi, Treasurer of Bobian Bank, and who has 20 years over experience in the banking sector, mainly in treasury services. Okay, so gentlemen, we have a very challenging task ahead of us. We stand in the way of lunch, all right? So let's try to keep this short, punchy, and straight to the point. Members of the audiences, we will also like each of your participation. Feel free to ask questions using the Slido that is provided. So maybe today we'll start with Mr. Hisham. We've heard today from many of the panelists of the growing importance of liquidity management in the Islamic market space. And just now we heard from Mr. Safri about the role the IILM plays in the Islamic liquidity management. Maybe please explain to the audiences the role that IILM plays and maybe the monetary operations that IILM issues the regular sukuk and how it affects liquidity.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Hanif. Selamat pagi, Assalamualaikum everyone. Selamat siang already. Pleasure to be here with you, and indeed, so the IILM is an institution that has been established by several central banks, including Bank Indonesia, to fulfill the gap in terms of liquidity management for Sharia-compliant liquidity instrument. So what we have been doing since 2013 is to issue short-term sukuk in dollars, cross-border as a cross-border instrument, and offering various tenors to the market every month. We have been issuing an average of $1 billion every month through different tenors, like 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, and 12 months sukuk, in order to address the different market needs. And we have been growing our program from $2 billion in 2013 up to $6 billion that we have increased our program this year. And our instrument is being used by financial institutions to manage their liquidity as an HQLA instrument, a high-quality liquid asset instrument, benefiting from various regulatory treatment globally. We are located in Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur, and we issue to various jurisdictions in Southeast Asia, Africa, GCC, Europe as well. And financial institutions, central banks, as well as sovereign wealth funds, asset managers are using the IILM sukuk to manage their liquidity on a regular basis.
Okay, thank you, Hisham. So maybe I'll turn now to the host, Pak Rahmatullah. So we heard from Hisham that IILM papers are used for liquidity management by various FIs, including the central bank. Maybe you can share with us, how is it that through sukuk, and maybe in particular IILM, how do you use it to support your financial stability in the Islamic financial system and also in your reserve management?
Thank you, Hanif. Thank you for inviting me. It's an honor for me. But because this is the lunchtime, and then you said perhaps the audience can answer the question. So before the audience answer the question, let me ask a question. to the audience to make sure they are awake because it's lunchtime. So, if I may, I'd like to ask the audience, who think that the Fed is going to cut 50 basis points this year? Raise your hand. How many? Oh, only 4, 5 hands. Okay. Who think the Fed is going to cut another 100 basis points next year? None? Only you. Okay. About 50 basis points next year? Okay. Not even half. Okay. So this is a good indication that everyone in this room who are aware that development of the financial market, there's the risk everyone is facing right now. The market volatility is so high. Last month, after the Fed cut 50 basis points, and then everyone thought, okay, it seemed that Fed is starting to cut, and then another 50 and another 100 next year. But suddenly, after the numbers and everything, so if last month that we saw the 10 years US Treasury 3.7%, now it's 4.3%. Very volatile. That's why the liquidity instrument is very important. Very important for the system and very important also, of course, for all the asset manager, including the Indonesia. We manage the country reserve because the high uncertainty in the market currently. And not only that, of course, liquidity instrument is very important. Even though the Fed cut the rate, but somehow everyone, every asset manager, every corporation need to manage the liquidity. And especially if they are having a portfolio in Islamic financial market instrument, so they need it. So that's why I believe the IILM has taken a great role and responsibility to this, and then also is very good because, you know, IILM has taken very high risk also, because IILM invests in 5 to 8 years tenors and then financing it with starting from 1 month until to 6 month suku. So they having and facing quite a high risk. But it's, I believe that IILM can manage that risk. So that's why I said it is very important for us, for central bank to have this kind of instrument. And it's also very important to developing the Islamic financial system.
Thank you, Pak. Thank you for highlighting the risks and challenges that the market faces, and that we as Islamic financial providers, we too can't run away from the market volatility and challenges. So, given that scenario, firstly to my brother Khalid, firstly congratulations on the award. Maybe you can share with us, as one of the top principal dealers for IILM, what do you see in the current market in terms of liquidity needs? And how does KFH work with IILM to address those needs?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. I would like first of all to thank Bank Indonesia for setting this fruitful seminar, to be honest, and as His Excellency the Governor said, those seminars are needed to get more innovation and market insights from all jurisdictions, and inshallah to reflect on the Islamic industry at the end. Getting back to your question, Brother Hanif, on the liquidity and how KFH works as a primary dealer for the IILM, and to be honest, KFH started from the initiation of the IILM, worked hand in hand, started from the first issuance and continued on till this date. And if we look back and where IILM has reached, we saw huge milestones that have been achieved in regards to size of issuance and the frequency. Now it's a monthly auction, a competitive auction where all market participants put their own price, they see fair and seek, and which gives a good benchmark and indication of how the market or the market participants benchmark the ILM. So ILM is even used as a benchmark to price, let's say, on an internal basis in the banks. Now, as a primary dealer, the way we engaged clients before and we continue to do so is when we get to meet clients, ILM is one of the products or one of the solutions we have for clients and counterparts that we meet. And we always see the ILM paper as a window for clients to participate in Sukuk for two main reasons: the short-term tenors of the ILM and the credit quality of the ILM paper. So when seeking to market it to clients, it would be more acceptable for them to participate in. And we saw it in different occasions where counterparties started investing in the ILM first, and then that was a window for them to participate in long-term Sukuk issuances. So basically that's where KFH stands in regards to the ILM paper and what we seek, and we know that it's going to be achieved, inshallah, with the collaboration of all PDs and ILM and the Islamic industry as a whole, is to have a more liquid and frequent issuance and other ILMs in the market to facilitate the short-term liquidity gap that the Islamic industry has. We know on the conventional side there are many tools that could be used, but on the Islamic side for the short term, it's quite limited for us as in Islamic banks. And I believe that's why ILM was initiated in the beginning, and hopefully we're going to reach for a more liquid market and solutions for these types of products.
Thank you, Brother Khalid. So, Brother Adil, just moving on to you. So we've seen IILM subscription reach, as Brother Safri has mentioned, the bid to cover ratio has even reached above 300% in recent auctions. We've seen the distribution of IILM 61% in Middle East in your region, and about 26% in Asia, and with 12% in the rest of the world. So Brother Khalid has talked about IILM being a benchmark. In your experience as being a PD, what are the observations that you see from an investor perspective when it comes to double IILM investment? How do you pitch IILM as a Sukuk investment to your investors?
Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah. Thank you, Brother Hanif, and I'm glad I'm being part of the panelists here. And it's my first time to Indonesia. It's new exposure, new country, new culture. I'm happy and proud to be part of the audience here. And as my brother Khalid said about IILM, IILM's story is solve a problem for Islamic banks. Let's put it this way. It's an instrument for short-term issuances where the Islamic banks face issues to place. And from Kuwait perspective, we don't have the sovereign issuances, government. They only issue conversion papers. But Central Bank actually allows us to invest in ILM and IDB as a replacement to consider that. So that's one first point I want to say to other colleagues in banking, Kuwait Islamic banks, that ILM instrument is part of the ISUKLA for liquidity management tool and in essence short-term issuances. We have IDB, which is 5 years duration, where ILM comes to the shorter duration, which is before the profit rate swap become more instrument used as a hedging interest rates. ILM is considered for me like playing a role. If I have an IDB 5 years duration, if I have composition with the ILM short duration to mitigate some volatility in profit rate risk side. So one for institutions, banks, it's instrument for liquidity management. In short term, with now, mashallah, comes monthly auctions, so you have any time and window, you can participate. If you have short in certain ratios, you go aggressively to bid. If you are long, you can underweight, and you have more flexibility. So over the 10 years now, mashallah, things are progressing. The new segment that we try to introduce to the money market funds in Kuwait, that you invest a time deposit with the banks for the dollar funds, but since IILM is short duration in nature, it's some regulatory requirement that don't go long duration, IILM fit the role. It gives them some bit of pickup in yield, same time it's a liquid instrument. So we see some investors from time to time to tap on that. In addition, it's good, like Brother Khalid said, it's good introduction to go to the fixed income market in principle. So you have these sophisticated customers, or not sophisticated, they are frequent to real estate or time deposits. Sukuk IILM is a good entry point to have the feeling and the history of that.
Okay, thank you, brother. So we've heard the IILM as a HQLA instrument, as a short-term liquidity provider, as a valuable instrument to provide the liquidity gap in the Islamic space. So, Brother Hisham, to fulfill the goal of liquidity instrument, you need to have a wide-ranging acceptability. Currently, what challenges do you see IILM faces from a regulatory and tradability issue, given the current financial market dynamics, and what role do you think, or what innovation will IILM progress further into to overcome these challenges?
Thank you, Brother Hanif. So indeed, as it's been mentioned before and by Sheikh Safri as well, I think that the main issue for the industry, not only for the IILM, is the size of the issuances, of the availability of the liquidity instrument. So our first challenge, since we have a strong demand for the paper, more than 200% in average since beginning of the year, is to increase our supply to address the market demand. So for that, to be able to do that, we need to increase our portfolio of assets. So we issue short-term instruments backed by long-term private placement in sukuk format with sovereign entities that are highly rated. And as you know, in the Islamic finance space, highly rated sovereigns are limited. And one of the innovation we're coming through is to bring a new type of assets, diversifying from this long-term private placement to more short-term money market Islamic deposit, to enable us to grow further and address the demand for the paper. So it's one of the challenges we are facing, as well the standardization and the acceptance of the paper globally. As we are saying, we are a cross-border instrument. We don't issue only in one jurisdiction, so we issue globally, so we need to ensure that our security is widely accepted. So that's why we aim at the highest tangibility ratio as possible. Currently, we're at 76%. And most of the standard IOFI and Fiqh Academy required at least 51% to ensure the sukuk are tradable. So for us, we always try to aim at the highest possible tangibility ratio. There is also another point which is very important, as you mentioned, is the HQLA, regulatory treatment. So being owned and established by several central banks, we benefit from a high quality regulatory treatment from level 1 down to level 2A. So we are working on harmonizing the HQLA instrument to ensure that it's received the highest HQLA treatment, level 1 with zero risk weight, and it will also bring more investors to the IILM Sukuk. So more investors, more players will allow more liquidity as well. And I think one of the challenge as well, as I think as His Excellency Pakperi mentioned earlier, is the education of the market. and spreading awareness about the tools that we are making available to the Islamic financial institutions. Initially, when the IILM was started several years ago, more than a decade ago, there was a limited number of HQLA instruments that the Islamic financial institution could use. Even though we have issued more than $110 billion since 13 years, more than 270 sukuk, there are still limitations. There's still not enough supply. And I think also, as Pak Rahmatullah mentioned, we are managing asset and liabilities. So it's a gapping risk that we are managing on a regular basis. We issue short-term instruments backed by long-term assets. But what Pak Rahmatullah forgot to mention is the chairman of our board risk committee. So, and all our governance is very strict. All our central banks sit in our different committees to ensure that we respect all the highest market standards and that we mitigate all the risk, because what we want to offer to the market is a high quality instrument, a safe haven instrument, and we have noticed during the last liquidity stress during COVID-19 in 2020, we were the only one issuing and reissuing in the market because we issue every month. We can't stop our issuances. We have noticed a drop in the secondary market during that time because most of the investors wanted to hold HQLA high quality paper at that time. So it just convinced us to continue to increase our supply to try to address more the demand. Also something we are looking at is, because we are demand driven, is how we can increase not only our supply but diversify and broaden our offer. So currently we're issuing only in dollars, short term, up to 1 year, but there is still a gap because most of the sukuk are issued at 5 years and above. So the belly of the curve from 2 to 5 years is still empty. So it's something that we are looking at and we are considering. Also, there is more and more requests to offer our instrument in other reserve currencies, like euro, pound, and other currencies. Of course, for local currencies, you have Suk B, for example, in Bank Indonesia, and other instruments from other regulators across the globe. So for us, our instrument is complementary of what the central banks are offering. So another, and I think we can speak about other innovation in future, how to enhance liquidity. I think to centralize the trading of the sukuk at secondary, because currently it's more an OTC market. For us, we as a cross-border issuer, we see who is interested in our sukuk and who wants to sell at any point of time. So we try to work closely with our primary dealers and channel the flows of investment from Southeast Asia to GCC, Europe, and Africa. So it's the role we're trying to play.
Thank you, Brother Hisham. So it's interesting you mentioned that during the COVID period, the demand for IILM papers actually increased, right? Because of the scarcity of supply and as people, usually in a crisis, people revert into the most safest paper. So it has, in a way, similar characteristics of US Treasuries as well, right? And I think in the Islamic space, or in the sukuk space, we have that, we lack that presence, right? We see often in the times of crisis, gold is a safe haven, US Treasury is safe haven. In the Islamic space, we should have similar assets to be able to invest for liquidity management when it comes to when the crisis comes. So given that, do you think, coming back to you, given Brother Hisham's suggestions that they will issue in various currencies and possibly extend the duration of their issuances, and putting on your investor hat, will that make IILM more attractive and may perhaps BI, as one of the founding members of the IILM, will increase their reserves, or will increase the percentage of IILM sukuks in their reserves management?
Thank you. Of course, as chairman of the BRMC, we working together with the management that we are, of course, guarding the risk aspect. Yeah? I think the ILM has a lot of capacity. As Brother Hisham mentioned, the problem is the supply. Because it's not like the ABCP or asset back. ISWing and Sukuk have more thing to do. The compliance, the other things. So it's not as simple as that. That's the thing that make the supply a bit limited. So but I believe a lot of potential asset that can be work together with the ILM, and then ILM can ISWing more and more Sukuk. And then as again for central bank in this current situation, we love short-term instrument. I think most of asset manager love short-term instrument because you need to have it's very difficult for you to extend your duration in this kind of situation. Just as mentioned, if last month you extend duration too much, then you will burn. We will burn, right? Yeah, so your feet will be under fire. So that's why short-term instrument very important. And for the ILM, it's already fulfilled this need. But if I can also raise an issue, not only the supply, the tradability. We know that ILM instrument is very tradable. About 50% of the Suku is traded in the market. But not only that, because due to the lack of supply, some investors put the ILM Suku in their HTM or hold to maturity portfolio. So they cannot sell. So that's why I think we also need to develop a very good Islamic repo market to ensure the liquidity. Even though they put the ILM Suku inside the HTM portfolio, hold to maturity portfolio, but if they can report it, securities, so they can have, a liquidity rising from the ILM. So the more supply, I think not only central bank like us, but other asset manager, we're gonna love it. But of course, the price is also something that they consider. But I believe that ILM can make it. Thank you.
Okay, so Brother Adil, maybe I jump straight into you. We talked about the repo market, right? And I think in the previous panelists have also discussed the challenges about streamlining and standardization. What would be your suggestion as a PD to increase the tradability of ILM and the usage of repo to increase the velocity of ILM papers in the market?
First of all, need two things for document structure, Sharia compliant structure for repo. As of now, which is standardized by IFM, International Islamic Financial Markets, it is the collateralized murabaha, the pledge structure. However, still the economics not matching the conventional, where some banks requires the title transfer, which is still under development on that side. So from documentation, how to be recognized the structure, and how to have the real value of the repo, not normal pledge or collateral lending. It will be more repo transaction essence. The next step is how from accounting perspective to be recorded and Sharia compliant. Conventionally, it's straightforward how to be captured, but the challenges will come Islamic banks that we face from Sharia requires X, Y, Z, and now how this will be reflect our financial position and how that might impact other things will need to be taken into consideration because of the unique structure. So from structural perspective, and you check regulations as well, if you allow or not allow, and what kind of assets. And it should be that, I think the market needs to develop that side. I think more investments, more an investigation to develop this documentation. I believe the IFM now working on the GEMRA to have joint, like they've done the ISEF for the House Master Agreement, they will replicate the story again. Hopefully that success, the GEMRA will give us more insights on how to do that. Secondly, the netting jurisdiction for the sukuk clearing. That's another regulatory. Lastly, the security itself. And I think Brother Khalid, we discussed that before, that ILM need to be tradable, more liquidity, because what's this, any bank will ask for repo, the haircuts applied to that security take a great part of the liquidity of the security itself. The most liquid security, the lower the haircut you apply. The less liquidity, the higher the haircut you apply. That's the balance that I think which should be primary dealers and others will try to promote to make its ILM more liquid in the market in order for them to classify, to entail for less haircut to be applied. That's how to, I think, from my side to see the comprehensive, from documentation, from accounting, regulatory if it's required, and from the liquidity itself and the security.
So maybe we should pass the baton to the regulators and the lawyers to maybe come up with standardization for our Islamic repo across the jurisdictions. So, and I hear the message that we need to increase the liquidity of ILM. And I think to increase that liquidity, we need a wider acceptability, particularly from the conventional space. So maybe Brother Khalid, can you share with us what would be your pitch as a PD for the conventional investors to purchase IILM Sukuk?
Well, as an ILM paper, I don't think any efforts must be needed to sell it to the conventionals because they're more flexible. They can invest both on the conventional and Islamic side. They look at the main, let's say, targets of investments is the credit, and ILM with a high credit and HQLA paper can sell itself, let's say. So the conventional side, the only thing I might think of on the conventional side is outside the usual jurisdiction of the ILM paper, which is mostly the GCC and the Far East. If we move to Europe and America, then there is a weak knowledge about the paper itself. Although we've been seeing demand on the Sukuk side, on the normal long-term issuances, we've been seeing demand from jurisdictions outside the region. But at the end, the supply, which I believe have been mentioned a couple of times now regarding the scarcity and the supply of Sukuk, is leading to even a pricing differential between the conventional and the Sukuk issuances, even on the same name. So we've been seeing Sukuk pricing inside the conventional because of this demand, which makes international investors or conventional investors, let's say, shy away because they have the bond which is pricing better than the Sukuk. But on getting back to the ILM, knowledge is the key factor here. We need to market it even further across jurisdictions. Me and Hisham, we had talks before of different investors outside the normal region, and I mean, if we see more supply from the ILM, we can see even more investors, or especially on the conventional side. At the end, it's a HQLA paper, and the conventional side have more flexibility than the Islamic because they can invest in both. So if the ILM paper ticks the box of HQLA and the credit side, it's going to be easily in demand from the conventional banks or investors in general. Okay,
thank you, Brother Khalid. So, Pak, coming back to you, just wanted to check. We've heard from your central bank governor, we need more Sukuk. That I think is a very clear message. So, given that insight, and given that our PDs have attested to the strong demand for ILM Sukuk, maybe you can explain to us why maybe there's still some reluctance in certain areas of the Sharia space, to fully invest in ILM or Sukuk papers. Is there anything else that you think from a issuance perspective that can be done to attract more investors. I mean, we know that Brother Hisham has a strong mandate in front of him to issue more. I think that message is loud and clear to also to Brother Safri. You know, you have to issue more. There is a lot of demand, but how do we increase that tradability among the market players?
Okay, thank you. Due to the lunchtime, I remember once said to me that a road to heaven feel like hell, a road to hell feel like heaven. So, of course, because we are talking the road to heaven, this is the road to Jannah regarding the Islamic thing. There's a lot of difficulties, but let's address it one by one. Of course, there's a beauty of this. Conventional investor can invest in Islamic or Sharia instrument, but Sharia investor cannot invest in a conventional instrument. So it seems that you have a very good potential demand, but maybe one thing we should do is marketing. Explain it to them. Not everyone really understands the suku, because the suku itself is maybe for most conventional investors, something strange in their ears. And then, not only about the suku, and after that, the contract, murabaha, wakala, salam, everything. So maybe if we can find a jargon, maybe in English, something that easily explain to them, I think this is something that can help them understand, okay, this is very interesting, because at somehow, the suku have some similarity with asset back, but this is more clean, more Sharia. When we talk about the ESG, why people buy ESG? Because there's some noble value in it. But we can also bring this also to the conventional investor. So I think one thing that we should do is about the marketing, to how to communicate this instrument, because a lot of potential of this instrument also have a very good quality because it's backed by the asset and have a very good standard. So if we can do a mass, communication with all investors, this is something that maybe can increase the demand. But again, without doing that, the demand is big. Let's talk about the supply also. But maybe in the other occasion we discuss about the supply. I already mentioned about the supply. Okay.
Thank you, Pa. Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, we've heard the clamor for investment in Sukuk. We've heard that there must be more issuances, and we've heard that the road to Jannah is very difficult, and that you should the opportunity to invest in Islamic assets. There is opportunity in investing in HQLA assets, and IILM provides that opportunity, and that there is a vibrant PDship market. Right now there is 12 PDs that is available to market make the sukuks. So with that, I would like to end this session today. Thank my fellow panelists, and thank all of you here today for listening and providing all the necessary feedback, and may we all strive towards the road towards Jannah together. Thank you.
Thank you, moderator and panelists. Now let's have a group photo together. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Once more. 1, 2, 3. Thank you, gentlemen. You may all be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, as we reach the conclusion of today's seminar and investor forum, it has been a privilege to witness the shared commitment, innovative ideas, and powerful insights brought forward by our esteemed speakers, panelists, and contributors. On behalf of the organizing committee, we extend our deepest gratitude to all participants, speakers, and guests. May the connection and ideas generated here drive meaningful progress in our sector and inspire collaborative efforts for years to come. Not only you can join seminar like this, on ISEF 2024 also presents a variety of activities ranging from series of forums and talk shows with various interesting topics, studies, grand public to cross-generational competition. You can also find various exhibition booths ranging from modest fashion, halal food and beverages. For more information on ISEF, please check the official website isef.co.id and ISEF social media channels, Instagram at isef.id, YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook at ISEF Indonesia. And let's continue to support the Islamic economy and finance to create Indonesia's inclusive and sustainable economic growth by purchasing products of MSMEs fostered by Bank Indonesia. And we would like to make some announcements. For Bank Indonesia's participants, you are invited to have lunch at Kasuari Lounge. It's located at the lower level of the convention center. For speakers, luncheon is provided at Summit Room, located at lower level as well. And prayer room is located at the plenary hall on the ground level of this convention center. An announcement, a special announcement for Bank Indonesia Institute in-house training participants. Your session will be taking place in Merakwan Room, lower level at 2 p.m. Once again, thank you all for your presence and participation. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.